Okay, so let's say I've made an animation in my file, so I'll play this back. So we have the shot right here, which is just a zoom dolly. And so we want to export this animation. I don't really want to send this file and kind of play it back for somebody in Maya. I actually want to send it as a video file. So in order to do that, it's pretty common. What you want to do is you want to go to your animation menu set. So selecting animation. We have this playback option right here. We'll click on that. And the first option is going to be a Playblast. So Playblast is going to be essentially a video that's created of our viewport animation. So it's not going to render it out, but it's going to essentially record our viewport and give us a video back. So I'll click on this little box right here to open our menu settings for it. In here we have quite a few settings, and so we can do, first thing we're going to choose is our time range, so how much is shown in our Playblast and how much is being recorded. So you can do the time slider, so if you have your time slider set to what you want, right? So let's say I only want to show frames 0 to 60, and I've set the starting point from 0 and the end point to 60, even if I have a bunch of animation. Then if I have this set correctly in Playblast, it's going to give me exactly what I see when I press play on my playback options here. You can set a defined time, start and time, end time as well. I'm just going to use a time slider in this case because I've set it from 0 to 60. We can use sequence time. That's if you're using the animation sequencer, which is kind of beyond what we're going to need for this kind of project, so we'll leave that off. View is going to play back the video once we're done playblasting. So it's going to use like your default like video player settings in order to play back the video when you're done, which is fine, but we're probably not going to actually, we're not going to turn that off. So we're going to leave that on. And so if there's any reason why you don't want it to play back the video when you do it, you just turn that off. Ornaments are going to be this little bit right here, which is showing your orientation of your space and also the name of your camera. So usually I leave that off, but there's certain instances where you'll want that information kind of given back to you. We can do render off screen, which is going to, when I click on Playblast or click apply, you'll see that it's going to do like a screen buffering kind of playback, and here I get my Playblast. Let's go ahead and close that. And let's go back to Playblast settings. And you can turn on render off screen, and what it's going to do is it's not going to do that on screen buffering, it's going to do it off screen, you're not going to see it. And so that's really just based on if your computer's having a hard time playing it back in real time. Format, we have AVI, which is going to be a video file or image. And so we're going to be working with an AVI file. We have different encoding settings, but we're not going to really worry about that right now. If you have different codecs saved on your computer for encoding images or videos and images, then you can maybe select these. But I think by default, if you're using a Windows, you can just select none. Also, this format might be different if you're working on a Mac. You might have something like QuickTime or Qt, or I think AV Foundation. So this setting might be different. If you are using Qt or AV Foundation, it's probably a good idea to use an encoding in here, different codecs. So if there's an H.264 in here, that's generally a good one to use. But generally speaking, if you don't have those, then it's probably fine just using it in its uncompressed state. If you do go with image, what it'll do is it'll actually give you either usually like a series of images. So if I set JPEG, what it's going to do is it's going to output a bunch of JPEGs. So in this case, 60 JPEGs. And let's go ahead and click on apply and see what that looks like. And so here's my images brought in together. And let me go ahead and bring up that those images. Ooh, okay. So let's go ahead and close this. And so you'll see it actually exported an image for every single frame of my animation. And so I'm just clicking through these. So that's if you want to, this is called an image sequence, if you want to export a series of images. What we could also do is we can come in Playblast, and we can set that to a GIF. If you wanted to do a GIF, I'll go ahead and click on apply. And this is just, of course, going to give us a GIF image, right? And so, now you have a file format that has time and animation set to it. And it's kind of buffering, so that's why I went really slow. But we're going to be just sticking with videos for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select that. go back to, we can also access the Playblast options by right-clicking on the time slider and going to Playblast there. We don't have the same exact options, but more or less the same. We're going to go to AVI, I'm going to set encoding to none. Always set the quality to 100 and the scale to 100. If you don't, it's going to be playing back at a smaller size or at a lower quality setting. So just set those to 100 and also the scale to 1. The display size you can do from window. I recommend doing from render settings and then just double checking your render settings so that you're rendering it out at the image size that you want it to. So let's say I want to set mine to HD 720. So it's going to be, the size of my video is going to be 1280 by 720. And then when I go ahead and Playblast, it's going to set it to that size. Frame padding you don't have to worry about. That's for if you do image sequences. It's going to be how it names and sets the numbers for the names of the image. But we don't have to worry about that. We're going to go ahead and click Save to File, and we're going to choose where we're saving it. So you can see I'm saving mine in this folder right here. Or actually, it's in the Downloads folder, and it's going to be called Zoom Dolly. And when you're ready, just click Apply. I already have a file, so it's asked me to overwrite, and I'll say yes. And it's going to process it right there, and then here we are. So the one thing I don't really like about this is that, well, there's a couple things. First, we want to make sure there's nothing in our scene. Like you can see I have something selected, and it's got like this weird green glow on it, so you want to make sure you're unselecting anything in your scene. I also want to double check the quality settings of my viewport. So right now I do have anti-aliasing on, so all these lines, including diagonals, are fairly clean. But you'll see that when I turn it off, it's not going to look that good. The other thing I don't really like is the film gate, right? So I don't really want the film gate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. First thing I'm going to do is you'll see I had the camera selected, and so we were seeing the full strum at frame. Let's get that back down there. So you'll see at frame 0 I'm seeing some part of the camera that's being selected, so I'll unselect that. And there's something selected about it, and I can't tell what it is quite. Oh, it's this little locator that's in it, so I'll just delete that. Okay. So, I might unselect my camera. To get rid of that film gate, I'm just going to come up here and click on this film gate button to turn that off. And as long as I have the camera resolution set for it, so if I come into Playblast and I'm using the render settings for the display size, it's going to crop it correctly to what I want it to be. Right? If I just did from window, it's going to look not right, you'll see. So let's go ahead and let it buffer, and you'll see it's showing the entire viewport, right? So it's really dependent on that viewport size, which isn't what we want. We are going to come in here, go to Playblast, and we're going to do from render settings, and click Apply. And so now it's going to render out. It's going to be cropped correctly to where I had my film cropped to, but it's not going to show that film gate like it was before. Let's take a look at those render settings, or those display settings. Viewport settings, sorry, that's what I mean. So in the viewport, I already have mine set up like this, but I'm using what's called anti-aliasing, multi-sampling anti-aliasing, I think is what it's called. You can access that two ways. You can come over to Renderer, go to Viewport 2.0. So this is going to be the rendering method for your viewport. So by default, it should be Viewport 2.0. I'm going to open that up, and we're going to come down to anti-aliasing. So we have multi-sampling anti-aliasing. And so if I turn that off, it might be hard to notice, but you'll notice especially on like the edges of some of these objects, especially these curved objects, you're starting to get like a little stair-steppy kind of effect. You can see in the background too, like look at this line right here, you see it's a little stair-steppy. And so when I turn that on, you'll see that it cleans it up. And so what it's doing is kind of blurring and sharpening that part of the image so that you're getting like a clean line again. And that's not something we're going to get into here, like what's causing this. Anti-aliasing, or aliasing, sorry, it's called aliasing when you see that stair-stepping. And anti-aliasing is where you're cleaning it up by getting more samples of the image. And so you can use a higher value, it's going to give you a cleaner image. And I'm just going to come in here, and with that set, then I can do my Playblast. So that's the basics of creating a Playblast. You'll want to use those for submitting your animations, anything that's animated, including camera moves. And so it's a great way of taking your animation work outside of Maya to get it reviewed or showed to other people as a video file.